Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for April 4th, 2023. Well, the question we're going to look at today is who's going to tell Antony Blinken that the rules-based order is coming to an end? Each day there are new developments which show that the attempt by Blinken and Biden and Nuland and the puppets of the City of London and Wall Street corporate cartels are losing their grip. What happens when the rules-based order is no longer able to get other countries to submit to their orders? Well, that's where we are right now. The post-Cold War Order, or the unipolar order, which is coming to an end, came after the fall of the Soviet Union, with these proclamations by groups such as the Project for a New American Century, which was Wolfowitz and the Cheney gang, that the US won the Cold War, and there's only one set of policies which are acceptable, namely free market, neoconservative policies, with the United States as the sole nation which can dictate policy. And of course, behind the United States was the British hand. Now, this was essentially a City of London Wall Street project, which was run by private banks, corporate cartels. Think about Davos, the Trilateral Commission, and so on, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and think tanks such as Chatham House and the Atlantic Council. Blinken and the others are merely mouthpieces for these interests, and they're the ones who dictate the rules of the rules-based order. Now, they did that through control of credit, and recently, Malthusian policy, using the climate issue, climate control, as a way of enforcing Malthusian or depopulation policies by deindustrializing and destroying the potential of sovereign nations to engage in cooperative trade. Now, these rules were enforced by NATO and the US military, with coups, with wars. Your nations were essentially told, commit suicide by following our policies or we will kill you. You know why there have been so many coups. This is the reason. In congressional testimony recently, it was revealed that of the last 9 coups in the world, 8 were conducted by military leaders who were trained in the United States. Coincidence? I think not. Why do we have so many US bases around the world when we can barely afford to run trains in the United States or keep people in houses? And by the way, who is really protected by this unipolar order? Are the people of Ukraine protected by it? In fact, there could have been a negotiated settlement with Russia before February 24th, 2022. The Russians had been asking since the Maidan coup, which was run by the United States and NATO in February 2014, the Russians had been asked for negotiations to recognize their legitimate security interests, which included no NATO eastward expansion. This was not ever taken up seriously by Obama, by Trump, or by Biden. Instead, the attempt to negotiate was sabotaged, and as a result, we've had a war which has led to hundreds of thousands of lost lives lost because of NATO. When there was a negotiation that was moving towards some kind of settlement, it was sabotaged by that puffed up blubberball Boris Johnson, who was sent by NATO to tell Zelensky, no negotiated agreement. So how many Ukrainians have died because of NATO's attempt to dismantle Russia? How many more will die? Well, that's the question, and that's why we're seeing a collapse of the rules-based order, because nations do not wish to sacrifice their population for the benefit of the controllers of NATO, the US, and the British government. Now, here's a quote for you from the Financial Times, which quoted a strategist from the Royal Bank of Canada, who said, quote, "It's no longer a unipolar world," unquote. So who's going to tell that to Blinken, to Biden, to Schultz, to Macron, to Baerbock? Who's going to convey that message? I think they already know it, but they're still sticking to the policy which could lead to World War III. Meanwhile, you have a fragility in the US and Western banking system where we're seeing the danger of a chain reaction collapse because of debt. And what's the biggest part of that debt? Military budgets and bailing out bankrupt corporations. This whole banking system has been sustained by the looting of the former colonial nations, which they're not tolerating anymore, and by quantitative easing, which is inflating the economies of Western countries to the point that people are demonstrating by the millions in the streets of Western countries. Now, what's the latest evidence of this end of the rules-based order? You have the Saudis and Russia, as part of OPEC Plus, rejecting the demand from Biden and Blinken that they increase their flow of oil. Instead, they're cutting production, which will raise prices, but that's for their benefit. And so we see again a rejection of the order coming from Wall Street and London. Brazil is joining with the Saudis to conduct trade and investment in yuan, not dollars. In fact, there's a move outside of the dollar system to get outside the dollar-based SWIFT interbank settlement system and instead using a Chinese-based system. Now, this is for what purpose? Well, they don't trust the U.S. banks. They don't trust U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. has seized money in bank accounts of Afghanistan and Russia, $300 billion from Russia. Why would any country keep their money in the U.S. if that's going to happen? And also, they're watching the banking system collapse. So we're seeing moves out of that. The president of Brazil, Lula, is going to be going to China to sign a memo of understanding to join the Belt and Road Initiative, to have Brazil become a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. There's pressure from Blinken in the U.S. that he not go. You think he's going to stay home? No, it's in Brazil's interests and the interests of the whole continent of South America to bring the Belt and Road Initiative to that continent. Then you have a call from the South African foreign minister for Brazil, India, China, and South Africa to have a series to begin negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. There's a real clear danger of escalation coming from NATO. NATO's efforts to destroy Russia precisely because Russia is playing a role in reasserting sovereignty of nations to reject the dollar demands. So will this lead to World War III and nuclear war? Well, NATO is about to have in mid-June, for 10 days, the NATO Air Defender 23, which will be the largest air operation exercise in NATO's history. A coincidence? No, not at all. So what this means is that in the West, we have to stop thinking in simplistic terms. We're number one, China's the enemy, and so on. Socialism versus capitalism, left versus right. Now, U.S. policy is controlled by corporate cartels which operate above governments. It's called corporatism, or the real term for it is fascism. You think Biden's a socialist? Get serious. He's always been a corrupt tool of the corporate banking cartels, controlled by Delaware banks, the credit card industry. Look at the history of these networks, the Harriman-Bush connection to funding the Nazis before World War II, the post-war period, the Dulles brothers as a representative of these interests. In the period from the post-Kennedy period, the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum. You think Klaus Schwab is a genius who comes up with these designs on his own? He's another corrupt tool of these financial networks. So we're inviting people to join with the Schiller Institute, not just to bury the rules-based order, but to bring into being an order based on the common interests of all nations for economic development, because it's through economic development that peace and cooperation can be achieved. Only through that. And the Schiller Institute, under the direction of Helga Zepp-LaRouche, has been pursuing that in a series of dialogues. The next one will be April 15th and 16th. And I'm inviting you now to go to our website and register for that conference and organize others to attend. This is the best chance we have to put an end to this so-called rules-based order before this order puts an end to us. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.